Alright, boys and girls, if you can tell, my voice is a little bit sore today. I'm going to go ahead and try to make this video easy. This is lesson 8.5, Model and Solve Multiplication Equations. Our objective is I can use a model to solve multiplication equations. Remember last week in 8.4 and 8.3, modeling to represent equations. Here's a couple of practice problems with addition and subtraction. Go ahead and pause the video and try these out, and then play the video to see how you did. This first one, p minus 14 equals 14. All we need to do is the inverse operation of subtraction, so we're going to add 14 to both sides. That will cancel these here. 14 plus 14 is 28, so p equals 28. On this one, we had an addition equation, so we're going to subtract, which is the inverse operation. So then we have these cancel. 55 minus 55 is 0, so x actually equals 0. And then this last one I'm going to do on the next one, because it's fractions, a little bit more room. So we have a subtraction of 2 3/4. So to balance, we need to add 2 3/4 to both sides. So these cancel, we're going to have m left alone. So now we just need to take 6 1/2 plus 2 3/4. I'm going to add my whole numbers together first. 6 wholes plus 2 wholes, which gives me 8 wholes. And then 1/2 plus 3/4. That's what I'm adding next. Now if this is more than 1, I might have to add to my whole number if I get an improper fraction here, but let's it won't. Remember, when you're adding fractions, you have to switch to a common denominator. The least common multiple of 2 and 4 is 4, if we find the common multiples. So our 3/4 can stay the same. We're going to take 1/2, find an equivalent fraction with 4 as a denominator. We multiply 2 by 2 to get 4, and then we multiply 1 by 2 to get 2/4. So 2/4 is equivalent to 1/2. So we'll cross that out. Now we have 2/4 plus 3/4, which equals 5/4. Now this is an improper fraction. Switch it to a mixed number. 4 goes into 5 one time with 1 left over. So now I have 1 1/4. And I'm going to just take my 8 here, add that to it. So now I have 9 1/4 as my answer. Well, m equals 9 1/4 is my total answer there. Okay, remember, it's always important to be reviewing these fractions, because fractions are a huge thing, and you cannot add without common denominators. So make sure you're practicing with those fractions. It's very important. Okay, next slide. Excuse me. Alright, so here we have multiplication. Now, you guys remember that when we have a coefficient next to a variable, these two numbers right close together, that means 4 multiplied by x, or 4x, equals, then we have a numerical term of just 8. To model this, I take my algebra tiles. Remember, these large ones mean our x's, and because we have 4x, we have 4 x tiles, like so. Okay? Now, I already drew this out, but if I have 4x is equivalent to 8, I want to split these evenly, or divide these evenly among the tiles to see how much one tile is. So I've kind of put them in rows already, and I'll just circle these. So 1x equals 2 tiles, this x equals 2 tiles, this x equals 2 tiles, and this x equals 2 tiles. So here I've modeled how to divide my numerical term by my coefficient. So x equals 2. Now that makes sense. If I plug that back in, 4 times 2, because x equals 2, there's my x. 4 times 2 does in fact equal 8. Let's go ahead and try another one. Okay, here's another one. I have 2x. I'm going to make 2 big tiles here. And now I'm going to go across the rows. I have 10 little tiles, so I'm honestly going to go kind of old school here and just separate one in each row until I get to 10. Here's 1, 2, and I'm just dividing them. Here's one for this x, here's another one for this x. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So, when I look across my rows, 1x equals 5 pieces. So 2x equals 10, x would equal 5. We can double check our work, because if we have x equals 5, plug that in here, 2 times 5 equals 10. Okay? You're starting to probably notice that you're saying, Mrs. Twisdale, why do I have to draw out all these pictures when all I'm doing is dividing the numerical number by the coefficient, which is what I did. I really just did 10 divided by 2 equals 5. That's all I did, so I divided both sides by 2. But it is important to see what it looks like as a model. So go ahead and try this one on your own. You'll notice that the x's are on this side of the screen this time. That's okay, no problem. Just draw your x's over here. Pause the video and try it. Okay, so if I have 5x over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then I have 15 single tiles. I'll just line them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And then if I circle a row, 1 x tile equals 3 pieces, so x equals 3. How'd you do on that one? Hopefully you got it right. Here's another try it problem. And as always, if you're stuck, feel free to pause your video and raise your hand and I'll help you out with this. Go ahead and try this problem now. Okay, so you might have already said to yourself, well, I know that 21 divided by 3 is going to give me 7. Divide both sides by 3 because these would cancel out. 21 divided by 3 is 7 equals x. But let's just double check our work. I have 1, 2, 3 x's. I have 21 pieces, so I'm going to start drawing these. I'm going to draw circles. Hopefully that's okay. They're just a little bit faster. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. When we circle just for one x tile, that leaves us with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces. So x equals 7. Okay, simple enough. Try this last problem. I don't know if it's the last problem. Go ahead and try this problem on your own. Alright. So, I was to draw out 12 x's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, I'm not even going to have room. 8, 9. 10. Let's see, what if I draw 10, 11, and 12. I'm just going to kind of wonky. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And remember, I'm going all the way up to 36. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36. I circle just one. X, or x, equals 3. Check that back into our work. We plug it in. 3 times 12 does equal 36. And you'll notice, this will help you with tomorrow's lesson, we're really just dividing both sides by whatever the coefficient was. And that will give us our answer. Okay? Alright. Go ahead and try this problem on your own. This one's a little bit trickier, but I think you can handle it. Here we have 2x. 1, 2. go ahead and start splitting up here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 7, but I cannot split those evenly. So this is not a hard problem though. I just give each bar a half. So then, when I circle just 1x equals 1, 2, 3 and a half. Okay. You can have fractions with your answers, or you could even list it as a decimal, 3.5. That would be just fine as well. So, some problems will not divide evenly. This would be by 2. 7 does not divide by 2 evenly, but it can be split into a half, or sometimes you would split into a third or fourth. Totally fine. But I just wanted you to see a problem like that so you knew that it was okay if it didn't divide in perfectly. Excuse me. Okay, so here's another example problem. So this will go on the left side of your notebook. I'll have a try it problem for you practice in just a second. This is, you'll notice, it's still a multiplication problem because we have a coefficient with a variable, but our coefficient is a fraction. That's okay. You're going to be fine. All we need to do is a different step. Yes, for some of you who are a little bit more advanced, you might just say, well, Mrs. Twisdale, can't I just take 40 and divide it by 2/11ths because I know how to divide by fractions? Yeah, you can. That is totally fine. Another way to do this, because there's multiple ways to do math, if you follow these steps, step 1, multiply both sides by that denominator. If I multiply both sides by 11, so I have 11 times 40 equals, and then if I multiply 11 times 2/11ths d, oops, sorry, that was supposed to be an 11, then that just leaves me with 2d. And 11 times 40 is 440, 2d. And now you'll see we have a very, a much more simple equation that we can work with. And this time all we have to do is to divide by the 2 coefficients. Yes, I could draw out and model, but I don't want to draw 440 little circles here to represent the tiles, so I'm not going to. So I'm just going to do some simple division. I'm just going to divide 2d and 440 by 2. These 2's cross out and leave me with just d. 440 divided by 2 is 220. And that's my answer. Okay, so just a quick review. What I did is I multiplied both sides by the denominator. When I multiplied 2/11ths d by the denominator, it left me with just the numerator as my coefficient with 2d. And then 11 times 40 gave me a numerical value of 440. Once I had 440 equals 2d, I just divided by my coefficient on both sides, leaving me with 220 equals d. Okay, this next example. Now this one, excuse me, notice I don't have that fraction as a coefficient, but our numerical value is also a fraction. So there's a couple different ways to solve this. If you wanted to, you could just divide these both by 2/3. And now that looks kind of weird, I know, but it is possible. You just have to do keep, switch, flip. But I'm going to show you a different way. And if you want me to show you the keep, switch, flip way, I can do that. Just raise your hand and I can show you. But another way you could do it is you multiply the denominators together. So you take 3 and 2 and multiply them and you get 6. So now with that 6, you're going to multiply both sides of the equation by 6. So let me show you what that looks like. So I'm going to have 6 times 2/3 c equals 1/2 times 6. Okay. Now I'm going to switch colors here so you know that now this is how it would look, but I'm doing work here. I can do some cross canceling. Now I have 2 times 2 equals 4c. And then 1 times 1 is obviously 1. Do some cross canceling here. Half of 6 leaves me with 3. Okay. And now all I have to do is divide by that coefficient. So 3 divide both sides by 4. These cancel. And here I have 3/4. So C equals 3/4. And there's my answer. So just what I did is I multiplied the denominators together. I took 3 and 2. That gave me 6, and multiplied both sides of the equation by that 6. Cross-canceling left me with a coefficient and a numerical value, and then I just divided by the coefficient, leaving me with C equals 3/4. Okay, I have 2 more story problems. Both of them are try-its. The first one says, Mrs. Twisdale bought 5 tickets to the new Star Wars movie. It cost $20 total. How much was each individual ticket? Write an equation and then solve. I do want you to write out this equation. I know that some of you can probably just do it in your head, take these 2 numbers and do it in your head, but I want you to write me an equation with the variable and then tell me how much each ticket cost. Go ahead and pause the video and try it. Alright, so hopefully you decided to look at this and say, well, the total cost is $20. And she bought 5 tickets, and I'm going to use T to represent the cost of each ticket. And so I had 5T equals 20. I could draw it out and model it, but I'm just going to divide by 5 on both sides. So T equals $4. So each ticket costs $4, and that makes sense because when I plug that back in, 4 times 5 does give me 20. It is important, though, that you are able to write these equations, 5t equals 20, by yourself, because that part's going to get more difficult as you get into harder algebra. So you need to be able to write the basic equation and solve it as well. So make sure that you understand how to write the equation, not just doing complete mental math on problems like this. Okay, last problem. I gave you the equation on this one, you just need to solve it. Felicity took home 2/5 of the leftover pizza. Obviously this is not a true story problem. 2/5 was written as a fraction like this. The amount she took was half of a whole pizza. P is the pizza left over from the party, so solve for P. So here she has what she took home, 2/5 of the pizza, and that represents half of a pizza. So how much pizza was there to begin with is kind of the question. Go ahead and pause and solve. Excuse me, if you need to go back and look at your notes, 2 problems ago was when I did how to solve a problem with the 2 fractions. Go ahead and try it. Okay, so a couple of things. Remember, again, if you just decided to divide both sides by 2/5, like this, you can do that. And you'll probably get the same answer. You would have to do keep, switch, flip here, and it would have just given you what P equals. I'm going to show you the other way because that's what we practiced. But keep, switch, flip works just fine. And we'll probably do that tomorrow. Okay, so 2/5 P, I'm going to take both of my denominators and multiply them together. That gives me 10. And I'm going to times both sides of my equation by 10. First of all, 2/5 times 10. Let's do that one. I can do, cross these out. This becomes a 2, that becomes a 1. 2 times 2 is 4p. Equals, now half times 10. I could do this, guys, but honestly, I know in my head that half of 10 is 5. So it's going to give me 5. Now I have 4p equals 5. I can solve that by dividing both sides by my coefficient. Do not try to divide them both by 5, okay, because that will not work out for you. When I divide 5/4, I can do that, but I want to switch it back into a mixed number. 4 goes into 5 one whole time with 1 piece left over. What this means is that there was 1 1/4 pizza left over. Okay. All right. Now that's all the lesson for today. Again, I'm sorry about my sore throat. Please feel free to talk to me about any questions that you have. Make sure that you are trying these fraction problems because that's what's going to be a lot of your weekly work check is working with fractions. So be prepared for that. And as always, if you want to, you can flip them into decimals. Just make sure you do it correctly. Okay, hopefully you guys understood the lesson and happy learning.